Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome back, beautiful souls. It's literally 8 o'clock on the dot, which means that I'm on time. And if you're here, you're on time too. So welcome. Um, Welcome back to another Becoming Supernatural live discussion. Tonight, we're going to dive into parts 4 and 5 of chapter 4, Blessings of the Energy Centers. And I take it that you've already listened to or watched both parts 4 and 5 on my playlist. If not, you have time to go back and review all those videos over the weekend or whenever you like. But tonight, we're going to talk about this chapter and how this work in this chapter is where it starts to feel like transformation. And I know because I've been doing blessings of the energy center meditations for a few years now. And I know the changes that I've created in my life, in the way that I exist from day to day, and how I deal with conflict and stress. It's completely evolved how I respond to my life. And I'm not going to preface this by pretending as if I don't react because that would be a lie. There's still some things in my reality that trigger the hell out of me. But will say that from doing these meditations, specifically the blessings of the energy centers, I've seen tremendous changes in how I process things that are stressful, how I deal with conflict, how long I allow myself to linger in dysregulated states of consciousness, just my nervous system in general. And I just know that it makes a big difference. So if you've read all of parts of chapter 4 from 1 through up until now 5, or whatever parts of chapter 4, this chapter is definitely a game changer. I feel like this is the seat of the core of his teachings, Dr. Joe Dispenza's teachings. So if you've ever wondered how to shift from thinking about your future to actually becoming a vibrational match for it, this part of the book is absolutely your guide. We're going to talk about how we evolve our energy, how to draw directly from the field, and how blessing our energy centers creates coherence that the universe cannot ignore. We're going to jump in. I'm usually not the type to linger for people to trickle in. For those who are here, welcome. And others will watch this in hindsight. So I'm just gonna get started because I like to respect people's time and mine because it is Friday night. At any rate, part 4 is titled Evolving Our Energy and Drawing from the Field. Those are two sections that I kind of merged together in one video. But some of my key talking points for this part of chapter 4 is Dr. Joe explains how intentionally working with the energy centers upgrades your electromagnetic signature. And I like to think of whenever he uses that phrase, electromagnetic signature, he's talking about your aura. You know, we all emit a very particular frequency. You know how you meet people and you're like, oh, they have such good energy. That is their signature. We all have our own electromagnetic signature. And so, blessing the energy centers, he says that when we intentionally place our attention and awareness on these different centers, where your attention goes, there goes also your energy. Or where your attention is, that's where your energy is. So, literally, scientifically, your attention and awareness being on anything is giving it your life vital force energy. So, when you place it intentionally on your different energy centers, you are giving life from the unified field, from the quantum field. You are giving energy to that center. And he says it upgrades that center. It upgrades its performance, its functionality. It upgrades, he says that every center has its own brain and therefore its own mind, AKA its own consciousness. So think of it like each center has a soul. And just placing your attention and awareness on this center activates it to say, hey, I see you. And it gives it energy. It gives it energy and it's more fuel. So your body performs better and you become more magnetic. So he says also, as we evolve, he calls this, by the way, evolving your energy by placing your awareness on it. So whatever signature you have, you're just amplifying and you're improving the quality and coherence of your signature, your electromagnetic aura. So he says, as we evolve our energy, we can stop relying on outer conditions to begin drawing directly from the quantum field, which is exactly what I just explained. However, the part that applies to your everyday life is that you stop depending on external things to give you comfort or to give you relief or to give you assurance. And instead of, waiting for things to improve out there to regulate your nervous system, you learn how to do it within yourself. You learn how to, as Neville Goddard would say, give yourself a taste of fulfillment in your body, right? A lot of people fall into the manifestation space or they find themselves on the path and they might hit a roadblock because maybe they have some resistance on different topics. And they find that those topics make them anxious because they feel like they're not getting anywhere, or they feel like they're in survival mode, or they have a lot of lack around the topic. And so that throws them off energetically, emotionally. And he's saying that rather than waiting for those circumstances to change, for the manifestation to come in, learn how to teach your body to respond as if it's already happened. Because what do you think you're going to get when it happens? You're going to feel relief. You're going to feel satisfaction. You're going to feel calm. You're going to feel maybe some excitement. You're going to feel good feelings, or what Dr. Joe calls elevated emotions: joy, gratitude, love. When things are going the way you want them to go, you feel those emotions. So he's saying that we learn to teach our bodies how to feel that by, number one, blessing the energy centers, which is not just placing your attention and awareness on those areas, but it's bringing up those elevated emotions, the feelings you would feel when your prayers are already answered. And he says this shift moves us out of survival and into creation, which is absolutely true. Because as you're blessing the energy centers, you start to feel more calmness in your body. And then in part five, he walks us through the meditation. And at the end of blessing all of your energy centers, we're going to see that he talks about raising or elevating your emotions into the feelings of satisfaction, the feelings of fulfillment, as if your prayers are already answered. And then he says, in doing all of that, we stop reacting to life. We stop being reactors. We stop, and I don't say stop altogether as if you're never going to be triggered again, but you stop being as reactive. You become more aware of yourself and how you show up. You become more reflective. You become more patient, and you take time to think about things. You take time to process things before you just like lash out. You're not as reactive. And instead of being reactive, you become more magnetized. You become an actual magnet to what it is you desire, to what you prefer. Um, and I found this to be extremely true in my own experience. And this is why I, again, decided to reread this book. This is my third time reading this book, by the way, guys. Like, I could have read it again in my room at night before I go to bed, like I've done before. But I really wanted to bring this online because, like, I've noticed a lot of people want answers. And they always used to say this saying when it comes to people of color in America, that if you want to hide something from the Negro, put it in a book. Well, I think that's a broader statement that applies to humanity, not just the Negro, but anybody who feels like they're a victim to life. A lot of times they're looking for their answers outside of themselves. And so they'll look to a person or a circumstance to change and not realize there's a lot of answers that are around you that teach you to actually go within. And if you pick those books up, you'll see that. So I know, as a former educator, a lot of people won't. And then there are people who also have read the book. And I had someone comment on my page, was it yesterday or this morning, that they've read the book many times on audiobook, but they found my page because I'm doing these readings. And they're so grateful because Once you start doing the work, you want to build community. I'm losing my voice. I can't even say community. Yeah. I don't know what that was. But once you start doing the work, you want to find other people. Sometimes I know I do, and I usually find people online. I watch a lot of the testimonials, but I think it's nice to also have someone like myself to read it because I'm always fascinated at the types of people that have read this book. You know, people from all different types of walks of life, educated, not educated, you know, all different cultural backgrounds, all different religions, and I feel like I didn't see a whole lot of brown girls, especially African American females, reading this book. And I don't want to make it about race because that really doesn't matter to me. But what does matter to me is that I know I have a lot of people who I cross paths with, and they're always asking me questions, and they feel really comfortable with me, and they like some of the conversations that I bring up, and it's because of what I'm into. And I just wanted to invite people into this space of what I'm into, what lights me up, what gives me the perspective that I have that keeps me optimistic and believing in possibility. And this is one of the teachings. You know, I've been on this path a long time, and Dr. Joe's work is like very complementary to everything else I've already been learning, right? I feel like he gives me the practicality of application. And that's what brings me to his work. And I just wanted to represent, because I am like, you know, my own unique expression. We all are, right? You know, most people who tune in to others online, they tune in because they like something about the person. They like that person's unique expression. Yeah, you can read this book anywhere. You can download the audiobook. You don't have to be watching any of my videos on my playlist. But you're here because there's something about me that draws you in. Me being in my authentic expression, me showing up how I do resonates with you. And so I think for all of us, when we can lean into our authenticity and just show up, you never know that you might be what I always say, you might be the missing puzzle piece to someone else's puzzle. And that's what Dr. Joe teaches in this work. When you start doing this work, you have no clue who you're going to inspire, who you're going to influence, to get to know themselves on a deeper level, to become supernatural themselves. And I say that like we're becoming superheroes, but in essence, we are. You know, we're doing the uncommon. Common people, as Joe says, are doing uncommon things. Common people are healing themselves from chronic illness. Common people are manifesting things intentionally faster than, you know, a manifestation coach can teach you because they're doing it from within. They're not relying on a third party. They don't need, you know, like it's not even necessarily about techniques. It's literally about being in alignment. And Dr. Joe's meditations and everything he's teaching, and especially Blessings of the Energy Centers, puts you on the path to learn how to align with yourself within yourself. And so that's what I love about these teachings. And so I'm going to go into one of the questions that came in for part 4. And this person says, how do I know if I'm evolving my energy or just doing the motions of meditation? Okay, that's a good one. First of all, that's a good one because I felt like for a long time I was just doing the motions of meditation. But I would say you'll know by the quality of your presence. When you when your energy evolves, you feel less attached to outcomes and less attached to trying to make things happen. You feel less prompted to do techniques, right? You feel less inclined to try to do something to make something happen, right? And I feel like you feel less to do that way and be that way because you're more tuned into the frequency of just being. You know, like in my meditations, if I know, first of all, my thoughts don't stop, they just keep going. You still are going to have the thoughts, but it's when you can bring yourself back to the present moment and just remind yourself, I'm just here to be. I'm not here to get anything. I'm not here to fix anything. I'm just here to literally be. And then when you get into that space, you then place your awareness on the different energy centers and just be with it. Acknowledge it, acknowledge the functionality for those centers, acknowledge the tissues, the organs, as Dr. Joe guides you to, That's when you'll know that you're actually evolving your energy, because you become less concerned with the thoughts that come in and out, that come and go. And you become more in tuned with being present, just being, just, hey, this is here. I'm acknowledging that this is here. And I feel this here. And I'm just here. So that's what it is. You may still have thoughts, but there's peace underneath them and a deep sense of already being connected. I'm already connected. So you're not trying to prove anything. You're not trying to get anything. You're just being present, and you start to fall into trusting that you're already connected. And that's how you know you are evolving your energy and not just doing the motions. Because I totally understand. I totally understand that. Felt like that for a while. But that's why I keep coming back to this book, because the more I evolve my understanding of what I'm doing, the better I get at the meditations, and the more evolved I get at evolving my energy. And Dr. Joe says this too. Like, he goes back to the basics. He says he finds himself out of alignment. He finds himself triggered some days. He finds himself reacting some days. And what does he do? He goes back to the basics. What do? I go back to the book, back to the basics of the teachings, back to the basics of just being, because sometimes you could just be doing too much. You could be thinking too much, over analytical, and then you're back into your old patterns and your old emotional reactions. And that's no good, because that's the whole point that we're doing this work for, to evolve beyond the memories of the past. So the next question that I got for part 4 is, what does it mean to draw from the field instead of people or things? It means exactly what I just explained. You're not looking for the outcomes. You're no longer needing the world to be different in order for you to feel different. So you don't need the world to give you permission to feel abundant. You don't need the world to give you permission to feel loved. You don't need that specific person to change their behavior in order for you to feel valued and cherished and loved and powerful. You start to generate those states within yourself. And that's what it means to draw from the field instead of people, right? Like, you start to, what Joe says, put your attention and awareness on the energy centers, but then you practice those elevated emotions. And how are you practicing that? You're conjuring it up from within yourself. You're using your imagination. If you don't know what abundance feels like, imagine what it would feel like if you had the thing you think you needed. If you had the amount of money, if you had the house, if you had the cars, if you had the lifestyle. And then you're conjuring up that emotion, right? But you're doing it within yourself. You're not actually experiencing anything out there that has changed. You're learning to cultivate it from in here first. You give yourself what Neville Goddard, once again, and Abraham teaches. You feel the feelings of the wish fulfilled. You feel as though you're already the one, right? Feeling gets the blessing. And guess what? Dr. Joe says from there, the field responds. It reflects it back to you through experiences, through opportunities, and through my very favorite, synchronicities. When those synchronicities starts happening, that's when you know you're in alignment with what it is you're drawing in. It's not a coincidence. There's no such thing. We are electromagnetic beings, and we are always emitting a very particular electromagnetic signature, and there are always very particular matches for that signature. So if you're not okay with what you've been attracting or what you've been experiencing, change the frequency. And when you change the frequency, you'll change the matter that is drawn to that frequency. Boom. That's a bar, by the way. Bars. Anyways, that was the last question for part 4. So without further ado, we're going to get into part 5. And this is where Dr. Joe talks about the subatomic level of atoms in the different parts of the body. And this is where he also gets us into blessing the energy centers. So here he talks about how at the subatomic level, we are pure energy, constantly emitting signals. This is exactly what I've been talking about, our signature. And he says, by blessing the energy centers with elevated emotions like love, gratitude, joy, it increases our coherence. When you're placing your awareness and your focus and attention on these different centers, your brain waves start to harmonize. They start to uh, function in a more coherent way. They slow down and go into alpha and theta and gamma states of consciousness. Well, the same is happening in the body in those different energy centers as your brain waves slow down. They also have their own brain waves. They also have their own brains and minds. So the same is happening when you're tuning into them. And that energy is way more coherent and produces a lot more harmony and allows your body in those areas to be more in homeostasis, and it allows your body to be the super pharmacy that it actually naturally is. Dr. Joe talks about how our bodies are able to produce chemicals that are far more superior than any pharmaceutical drug on the market, but we have to give it the right signals and we have to give it the right environment to be able to do so. And how do we do that? We learn how to manage ourselves from within. We learn about our anatomy, we learn about quantum physics and how we are experiencing this life and how we are being affected by things that we can't see, and how we can influence the things we can't see with our minds. And so he says, by blessing the energy centers with elevated emotion, it increases our coherence. But he also emphasizes that this coherence is what allows the field to respond. So again, whatever that signature frequency you are emitting as your personality, whatever's not working, when you change the frequency, when you become more coherent, the field will then respond to you. It will respond to you with synchronicities, with opportunities, with changes that you can visibly see out there because you're physically changing in here. And so you're no longer going to be surviving, you're going to be activating your divine intelligence. And that's how people in this work are able to have miraculous healings. That's how they're able to manifest things that they put in their mind movies in his workshops. That's how they're able to tune into a potential that already exists in the quantum field and draw it onto them because they become a changed, elevated frequency, which draws onto it the match, right? And so I did get a question for part 5. This person says, what if I struggle to feel elevated emotions when blessing my energy centers? I just say stay where you are. Start exactly where you are, not stay. Start exactly where you are. In the beginning, I wasn't always feeling elevated emotions. I feel like it comes with practice, right? So even the intention of wanting to feel gratitude or thinking about somebody you love, that could be a starting point, right? Because you don't have to make that up. You could think of somebody that you love that lights you up inside. Focus on them. For me, it's always babies. Babies do that for me. Or maybe something good happened to me that week, or maybe I'm just grateful to have a nice soft bed with warm pillows to lay on at night. I don't know. When you find gratitude or something that you love to focus on, that'll elevate your emotions. Sometimes I find that a lot of us are numb when it comes to feeling certain emotions because when you live in a state of survival for so long, out of protection, out of self protection, we're taught to not show certain feelings, not, express certain things. And so some people are actually numb in that way out of self protection. But the act of showing up is already a sign that you're changing. It's already a sign that you're opening up. So if you feel like you don't know how to tap into certain elevated emotions, just start where you are and understand that the very act of showing up to try to do the meditation, to try to be present, to try to, whenever you're having all that chatter going in your mind, to try to bring your awareness back to the present moment, that effort is more than enough. And you don't have to try so hard. Just literally know that you showing up is more than enough. And I hope that answers your question and helps. This another question says, do I have to visualize something specific during this meditation? I say no. Like, there are plenty of people who don't have very specific things to visualize in their meditations. More than anything, you focus on how you want to feel. I would say you don't have to visualize anything at all. What matters is the feeling state. You let your attention rest in each center. You breathe deeply into each center, and then invite a sense of love or wholeness to build on. And so the body knows what to do with that signal. He says our bodies have its own divine intelligence. You don't have to figure it out. As a matter of fact, in the meditation, he says, now surrender, let go. It's not your job to do anything, because he wants to remind us that the body has its own intelligence that's on autopilot without us even knowing about any of this information. So it does have its own intelligence to function, to heal, to grow hair, to, you know what I mean, grow your nails back. You don't have to say, hey, nails, grow back. You don't have to say, hey, heart, pump, hey, stomach, digest this food. Like, it has its own divine intelligence, and it knows how to show up. Once you put your focus, attention, and awareness in those areas to help charge it up from the quantum field with that extra divine energy, let go and let it do its thing. So you don't really have to focus on a specific thing you want to visualize. I would just say focus on the feeling you want to feel. If it's relief, focus on feeling relieved. Feel as relieved as possible. So that breath right there, that always puts me in an instant state of relief. So if you can just do something like that, that's more than enough. Um, because the body truly does know how to heal itself. Um, and if there are no other questions, this is gonna be a nice quick 1-2-1-2 for tonight, which I'm not mad about because, as I said, it's Friday. I hope y'all had a great week. I won't date this video by saying what weekend we're in, but uh, I hope you had a great week, and I hope that you've enjoyed this week's readings. But as I close out of chapter 4, I just want you to remember this. Your body is not separate from your spiritual practice. It is the practice. I'm going to say that again. Your body is not separate from your spiritual practice. It is the practice. So often we get caught up in learning about techniques, scripting, journaling, all kinds of things, the water technique, the this, the that. But let me tell you, if you keep ignoring the way you exist every single day, you're missing the whole point. And that's why I love Joe's teachings, because he helps us remember that you can't do nothing without this vessel. This vessel is the very reason why you're able to enjoy whatever manifestations you draw into your life, whatever things you pray for that the divine delivers. You can't enjoy it without this vessel. So treat it like it's your best, most greatest ally, your bestest friend. Treat it like it's a Rolls Royce. Stop putting uh regular gas in it. Stop, stop treating your body like it's disposable. Stop putting yourself in stressful situations for longer than necessary in a way that's unhealthy to your vessel. Be a better steward of this divine vessel, because you get one in this experience, and it is your greatest ally when you learn how to work with it, when you learn how to be a better steward of it. When you bless your energy centers, you're not just shifting your health, you're shifting your electromagnetic field, your energy signature, your essence. And that affects everything that you're connected to. And the quantum, the unified field, always, always, always responds to coherence. It responds to coherence. And if you never knew what that word was before this book, just think back to every time you quote unquote manifested something, when you prayed about something and then you surrendered. You were in coherence and you didn't even know it. You weren't stressed about it anymore. You had accepted what is, you accepted your end, you let go, and you just said, I trust God, I trust the universe, it'll work itself out, whatever the case may be. But that was putting yourself in a state of coherence. And now we're having to learn how to be intentional about that on every subject, especially the ones that matter to us. So if you're here healing a condition, healing a chronic illness, if you're here trying to change a circumstance, a negative pattern in your relationships, if you're here to just shift dynamics in your family, to shift circumstances, patterns that you no longer want to live, this, I believe, is truly the way. It encompasses everything I've ever learned along my spiritual journey. It brings science into the mix, so it demystifies so much of the things that used to be just spiritual or religious and mystical. Um, but if you want to catch or rewatch the full journey, I've created a Becoming Supernatural playlist with all of the parts from chapter 1 through 4, including live replays like this one tonight. And it's free. It's linked in my bio. It's linked on my YouTube page. It's the only playlist that's public actually on my page. But you can start now, or you can restart your journey with me anytime. So next week, I'm going to begin chapter 5, and I hope that you'll keep tuning in because in chapter 5, we go deeper, it gets clearer the deeper that you go. And I want you to remember that you are the signal. Who are you being from moment to moment? Because that is your electromagnetic signal that you are sending into the quantum field, which is always responding to you through circumstances, through people, through health, through physical matter. Uh, you are the signal. And when you change your energy, you change the way you exist mentally, emotionally, energetically. You change the matter that you are magnetized to. So you are the signal and you're becoming someone the universe cannot ignore. So give it something to not ignore, something that you actually prefer. All right. I don't know who needs to hear this, but this is your reminder, and you absolutely, you got this. Till next time, bye guys.